Hey everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Arjun Vijay, the co founder of Geotus, a multi coin cryptocurrency exchange. Arjun is a graduate of IIM Calcutta and has worked for companies such as Vodafone and Amplus Solar before starting his own venture in 2017. Hey Arjun, welcome to ELI.
Hi Priya. It's my pleasure to be here.
I would request you to introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Sure. So I think you have given a brief intro already. So I did my MBA from IIM Calcutta, passed out in 2013. Before that, I did a undergraduate in computer science from R&D Engineering College, Chennai. Uh, Post IIM Calcutta, I worked for a couple of years in Vodafone. I handled territories in Haryana, Madhya Pradesh, and then I joined a company called Amplus Energy Solutions. They are into solar. So I was handling the South India for business development. So this was the time when I got introduced to cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin. I started trading in cryptocurrencies. I was also able to convince a couple of friends about the why they should invest in cryptocurrencies. So they got interested. So this was the time Vikram also, my batchmate from Miami Calcutta, he also got serious. We started trading, and a lot of our friends, they found cryptocurrencies a little bit complex to understand. So they said, I don't want to go through white papers, I don't want to go through technology, right? But I can trust you. Okay, you invest on my behalf and take a share of the profits, right? We were like kind of doing this like informally. That is when we realized there is a lot of friction in the Indian market, right? At that point of time in 2017, we didn't have order book based cryptocurrency exchanges. And even the guys who were there, they were supporting only one or two coins. You could buy Bitcoin, you could buy Ethereum, and that was about it, right? So we saw that it's like a huge difference between what was required. Like the potential of Bitcoin cryptocurrencies was huge, right? But it was totally underserved, and even to complete a KYC, it took like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So perfect time to start a cryptocurrency exchange, because end of the day, exchange is the fulcrum. Right? Anyone who wants to enter into crypto ecosystem, they have to go through an exchange. And we started Geotas in 2017. We incorporated in November 2017, and we launched the exchange in April 2018. So last 3 years have been eventful. Cryptocurrency as such has gone through multiple. It's a roller coaster. The bull run happened in 2017. Then we had like 2 3 years of bear market. Again, now we are in the middle of bull market. So we have survived all these time, and there's also uncertainty. Indian government have been going both like how they are going to regulate or whether they are going to ban. There has been like lot of uncertainty. So it has been I would say, like, to summarize, it's an eventful journey. And right now we have close to 150,000 customers. We are doing a trading volume of north of like 300 350 crores per month. So, yeah, that is a little bit about Arjun and Geotas.
Arjun, tell us what is the business model of crypto exchanges? How do these companies make money?
See, anyone who wants to enter into crypto ecosystem, like everyone has access to fiat. Like you all have INR in your bank account. Someone has a US dollar in their bank account, right? When they want to get into Bitcoins, there are two ways to get hold of Bitcoin. One is to create Bitcoin yourself. That process is called mining. But for that, you need expensive hardware, right? You need to import that from China. You need to have access to cheap electricity. It's a very complex model, right? So, like hardly, like I'll say, like 0.1% of the overall world, they get access to Bitcoin through that form. Remaining 99.99% of the people, they buy cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin through a exchange. So exchange is more like a marketplace. We connect buyers and sellers. So you say, I have 10,000 rupees in my bank account, I want to convert that into Bitcoin. There are people who are already holding on to Bitcoin, right? Either they have mined it or they had bought it from earlier, right? So they are willing to sell. As a cryptocurrency exchange, we act as an escrow. You want to buy, you put 10,000 in our bank account. The guy who wants to sell, he deposits like 0.1 Bitcoin into our Bitcoin address, and we lock them, right? And there's an order matching engine. When the price matches, this is typical to stock markets, right? You want to buy an ITC stock, there's a guy who is willing to sell an ITC stock. When the price is matching, right, the order gets executed. So once the order gets executed, you will find Bitcoin in your wallet, and the guy who sold it, he will find INR in his wallet, right? Whenever they want, they can withdraw, right? To make this matching, we charge a 25 basis points, 0.25 percentage for a buy and 0.15 percentage for a sell. This is our business model.
Okay. Now, my second question would be uh, to ask you why governments are so much apprehensive about Bitcoin.
Sure. See, first thing is the question will normally start like, why is Bitcoin still unregulated, right? Why hasn't Bitcoin got a legal status? So if you look at technology and regulations, it's always that technology will come first, right? You cannot create a law about internet before internet is there. So internet comes into India, people use internet, then government says, okay, they are using for these reasons. Okay, these reasons are good. These things are like bad. Then I need to regulate, right? Government take their own time to understand the product and then regulate it. This is the first part, right? So we cannot say that why government hasn't regulated yet, because most of the world, they are still going through the technology, how people are using it and how they should regulate. Japan has taken a, what to say, a lead. They regulated Bitcoin in 2017, and it is followed by most of the developed countries like South Korea, Australia, right, Europe. And even in US, some states have regulated it properly, some states they are still finding how to regulate it. So that is the part number one. Part number two, Bitcoin is not just a technology, it's also acts like a currency, right? When it comes to monetary authority, governments across the world, they want to have the sovereign authority, right? It is just that as a government, only I need to have control over a currency, right? I cannot have anyone. So that is the reason you find a lot of controls even over purchase of gold, right? There have been instances over the past 100 years where governments have stopped their citizens from buying gold or selling their gold, right? So because Bitcoin is both a technology and currency, so governments are figuring how do we regulate it. So that is the reason government is looking at this in a very careful manner. They are evaluating it. And what government is trying to do is, how can I take good things about cryptocurrency and implement it in my own currency and create something called a central bank digital currency. So all this is like chaos, right? It will take 5 years, 10 years to understand how this all is going to play, what is going to be government's role in cryptocurrency and what is going to be cryptocurrency's role in an economy, right? But there is a saying, no one can stop an idea whose time has come, right? uh, if you look at internet, if you look at electricity, right, even when they started there was like a lot of opposition, right? Even right now, internet based sellers like Amazon, they feel a lot of opposition from retailers, offline market. But end of the day, for customers, convenience is the most important thing, right? So in that way, I see that cryptocurrencies has already become inevitable, right? You see a lot of big companies who are against Bitcoin, like a lot of banks like JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Citibank, who were against Bitcoin in 2016, 2017. They have started batting for Bitcoin, right? Large companies like PayPal, MicroStrategy, even Tesla, they are putting their money into crypto. Twitter, right? They have invested huge amount in crypto. If you see last couple of days, there's another two companies which they are converting their cash reserves into crypto. We see this as an adoption that is going up and up, and it is coming from more and more regulatory certainty that Bitcoin is inevitable and it's going to get regulated. It's not going to get banned.
Okay. My next question comes about the central bank currencies or CBDCs. Uh, Probably within 1 year's timeline, we'll be seeing a lot of central banks rolling out their CBDCs. When they come to the market, what would be the difference between CBDCs and the typical cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin?
Okay. So there are two things, right, about cryptocurrencies. First part is why they were created. One is, when I see the contemporary financial ecosystem, there are two problems, right? First and foremost is the amount of money that gets printed, right? Government puts three kinds of taxes on you. One is the direct income tax, right? Second is the GST, indirect taxes. Third is the inflation, right? Every year, government prints a huge amount of new currency, right? If you see US, they are printing trillions of dollars of new currency for the stimulus, for quantitative easing, and for all kinds of reasons, right? Governments, if you see their what is their revenue and what is their expense, right, they always spend more than what they receive as income. So we talk about how gold used to be so cheap, how 50 years ago with 1 rupee I could eat so much, I could buy so much of stuff with just 10 rupees, right? It's not that the things have changed, the land has remained the same, gold has remained the same. The food items have essentially remained the same. It is just that the purchasing power of rupee has reduced drastically. Right? What does it mean? If purchasing power of rupee has reduced drastically, we call it inflation. So every year we are losing 5 to 10% of the power of money. So if you take 1 lakh rupees and bury it in the ground and take it after 20, 30 years, the value of money is almost nothing. Right? But this is not the same case with something like gold. That is the reason our Indian families are like so this thing about gold, right? Gold is a way to protect your wealth from erosion, right? If you have 1 gram of gold, that value continues to appreciate. The reason behind gold is scarcity, right? There is only limited amount of gold in earth, right? So Bitcoin, when they created, they wanted to create the Bitcoin with this sound principle that the maximum amount of currency that can be issued should be limited. So it is 21 million Bitcoins that can be ever be produced, right? And every 4 years that amount becomes half and half and half. So initially every 10 minutes 50 Bitcoins are being produced, right? Close to 11.5 Bitcoins got produced within the, so 10.5 million bitcoins got produced in the first 4 years. Then another 5 million bitcoins got produced. Then 2.5 million. Then 1.25 million. So every 4 years it becomes half and half and half. In the next 100 years, all the bitcoins that can ever be produced will be minted. After that, no new bitcoins will be minted. Okay, that is the first part, right? Bitcoin is more like gold, so that is the reason it's called mining. The concept, because it's designed like gold. Gold you cannot create out of thin air. You need to do a lot of hard work and mine it from under the ground. Okay. The second part is our contemporary ecosystem, the financial ecosystem. It is like you take the offline and try to match it with the online. You are not seeing what the internet ecosystem actually requires, right? It's not a native currency. That is the reason you see that you cannot make micro payments. I cannot spend less than 1 or 2 rupees in an internet. But look at the importance of micro payments, right? People can subscribe for one page or 1 second of music. Like I want see 15 years back, we used to pay for like 1 full minute, even if we talk for 10 seconds. Then paper second came into picture. You only pay for what you use. These kind of things are not possible in internet-based economy right now because the payment systems are so expensive, right? To spend 10 rupees, you have to pay a charge of 5 rupees or 3 rupees. But in digital systems like Bitcoin, you can pay payment like 0.0001. Ripple, it's almost free. There are in Stellar, the payments are almost free, and you can make micro payments. Right? In a digital economy, this is going to be very, very important. When you have a lot of autonomous cars in the market, I can just pay 10 paisa to the next car and ask them to give me a way. Right? So these kind of micro transactions are going to become huge. I will not buy a whole book. I will pay per page for a book. I read 10 pages. If the book is good, I'll read the entire book and I'm going to make the full payment. If I don't like the book in first 10 pages, I'm just going to pay for the just 10 pages. This can be true for songs. This can be true for movies, right? So the good movies, people will watch fully and get paid fully. And bad movies, they're going to be stopped, right? So right now, I'm not buying a lot of books because I'm skeptical whether they'll be good quality or not. So these kind of things, both central bank digital currencies and cryptocurrencies, they both can solve this kind of problem, right? But the first thing I talked about, the limited amount of currency, the value appreciation, right? This is not possible in central bank digital currencies. So what central bank digital currencies are basically is they are like an advanced version of an UPA, advanced version of an IMPS system, right? And in a lot of ways you will actually bypass the local bank. You don't need an HDFC or a SBI, right? You will be holding account directly with the RBI and transacting directly with the RBI, right? So because it bypasses a lot of middlemen, there's going to be a lot of cost savings. But at best, it's another form of payment infrastructure like an IPA, UPI, just little bit more advanced, like 2G, 3G, 4G. This is like the 5G version of payment ecosystem. But the fundamental property of money, right? The limited, the scarcity, and all those things, that is where cryptocurrencies will score. And CBDCs cannot be like one tablet that solves all the problems, right? It's not a panacea. If you look at cryptocurrencies, why we have so many cryptocurrencies? Like why do we, when we have Bitcoin, why do we have Ethereum? If you have Ethereum, why do we have Tron, EOS, and all those things? Right? Because each of them is trying to solve a different problem. CBDCs, because of their centralized nature, they can solve at most one or two problems. Right? That is going to be the main purpose. Right? So this is where cryptocurrencies and CBDCs will differ. You'll have customized solutions for each and every problem. This is like an app store. You don't have one app that does all, right? For this video call, we are using Zoom. For For email, we are using Gmail. So that is the primary difference I see between CBDCs and cryptocurrencies, and why cryptocurrencies are not going to be affected by the launch of CBDCs.
Okay, that is a very interesting perspective, and what I conclude from here is CBDCs will become just another cryptocurrency. Having said that, I would like to speak about the regulation aspect of bitcoins or cryptocurrencies. You mentioned countries like Japan have developed some frameworks to regulate cryptocurrencies. Would you like to tell us how that works? How the regulation of a decentralized currency uh, which is not owned by anyone, not uh, nobody has control over it, no single person or no single entity has control over it, how it can be regulated?
It's a very beautiful question, right? The way you have framed it. As such, Bitcoin, by this decentralized nature, it becomes a very tough animal to control, right? That's why it's more similar like gold, right? Gold, no one controls, right? If you have a mine, you print mine as much gold as you want, right? So having said that, how governments are trying to regulate is through the institution, right? Though Bitcoin promises you to be your own bank, right? You can hold Bitcoin with yourself. You don't need to trust a third party. You don't need to trust an institution to hold your own Bitcoin. But if you look at in practical purposes, there are a lot of institutions around. Institutions like us, Geotest, right? There are institutions for staking, for providing variety of services in cryptocurrencies. These institutions as such can be regulated, right? The citizens as such, they can be regulated. Okay, you are purchasing Bitcoins, okay, and you have made so much of profit, capital gains. Okay, so you can pay so much of tax. Okay, you are using Bitcoin for these purposes. Okay, these purposes are allowed. This is not allowed. See, it may not be Bitcoin, even rupees, even dollar, even gold. If you make any illegal transaction, right, you are purchasing a machine gun. If you are purchasing drugs that are banned, it's going to be for bad reasons, right? The good thing about cryptocurrencies, because it's all digital and because of the nature of blockchain, it's easy to track and trace all these transactions, right? From 2010 to till date, all the transactions that have happened in blockchain, it's in the public space. If you can find one place, okay, this address belongs to a drug cartel. Okay, you can trace the chain to the entirety. Okay, who paid money to these people? Okay, and you can see the right. You can easily identify all those things. So that is the reason. Though there is this rumor that a lot of terrorists, money laundering, and all those things are happening through cryptocurrencies, that's not the truth. Even right now, majority of this happens through banks, which are opaque black box institutions. You see, every year there are banks, large banks, that are fined millions of dollars for enabling these kind of cartels, right? But with cryptocurrencies, these things are not this can be easily traced. So what as government as such they do is, they want us to have tracing mechanisms, right? Have a monitoring system. Okay, at any point of time, monitor all the addresses from which deposits are coming from, monitor all the addresses from which deposits are going, withdrawals are going to, and ensure that none of these belong to the bad players, bad actors, right? This is all essentially regulation is all about, whether the source of money with which they are purchasing is clean, whether the source of cryptocurrencies is clean, and whether the destination of cryptocurrencies, whether it's it clean, right? And how does government earn income from this? Through taxation. This is all in a nutshell regulations about cryptocurrencies are.
Okay. Then there is another question around the sovereignty aspect of any government. When governments lose the power of printing currencies, is there any other reason why governments should exist? Because they are not, they will not collect taxes anymore. So that uh, again is another reason for governments would cease to exist. And would someone require governments to be there if everything can be done over cryptocurrency? Not only the currency part, then there is other cryptocurrencies which can execute contracts as well. So if these sort of possibilities are there, is there a possibility that government would cease to exist?
Okay, it's a very very good question. Okay, look at see, the thing is like, whatever we see today, we think this is what has existed throughout these years, right? But that is not true. If you look at the history of money, for a long time it was always decentralized. You look at gold, right? Governments could not create gold out of thin air, right? The whole thing about colonization of South America, North America happened because of the quest for gold, right? Where do I get new gold? So till 18th century, paper money, fiat currency didn't exist at all, right? After the 18th century, right? Governments have realized it's very cumbersome to carry gold and silver. I will issue paper currency which is backed by gold, which is backed by silver. Okay, till 1970, this was the case, right? Governments could not freely print currencies. They were supposed to back each and every printed currency note with gold. Okay, so there was a very significant pact called Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944, where all the major Western nations they came to a table and decided, okay, US dollar will be the reserve currency, and US dollar will be convertible to X amount of gold, right? And every other currency, the conversion will be denominated in US dollars. Okay, this was decided. So overall, whole world trade it was happening in terms of US dollar, right? But what happened in 1950s, 60s, a lot of governments saw that US government is printing more dollars than they have gold reserve for. So Charles de Gaulle, the president of France, he sent a truckload of US dollars and said, in return, give me the gold that you actually vouch for, right? A lot of other governments, Switzerland and other people, they followed this suit. Okay, US government realized, okay, my trick has been called for, right? People are seeing what I'm doing. Okay, if I'm keep on giving my gold reserves will be exhausted. So in 1971, he announces that US dollar is going to become fiat. The definition of fiat is not backed by anything. So in the last 50 years, whatever money is being printed, it's not backed by anything, right? That is the reason price of gold has increased drastically, right? There is a fixed scarce resource and there is this unlimited not scarce resource called printed currencies. There is a beautiful website what happened in 1971. Okay, if you look at the economy, how it has changed in the last 50 years, the difference between how real wages have not grown at all and rich are becoming richer. There's a lot of problems the countries are facing. It is because of this particular thing. Okay, this whole concept called Austrian economics, right, which talks about how money supply should be fixed and not be unlimited, right? You also mentioned about how governments cannot collect taxes. No, governments will always collect taxes, right? I spoke about three things, right? Direct tax, indirect tax, and then the inflation. So this is the third part where governments are not going to be losing. See, right now, no government has formally acknowledged inflation is a way for me to finance my budget, right? They always talk about tax collection, tax collection, tax collection. This is just the first two parts. First two parts, any which ways, they're going to collect even henceforth. And actually, it's much more traceable with respect to cryptocurrencies, right? With blockchain, you can actually, right? Blockchain has audit inbuilt within the system, right? That is the reason banks to all financial institutions, they are trying to bring blockchain tech, right? Cryptocurrencies have a built-in blockchain tech. They are powered by blockchain. It makes it much more easier for the government to actually tax things, right? What is happening is a lot of these things will be automated. You are saying government's role will get limited, right? Actually, government's role become easier, right? What is this whole thing about ease of doing business? It's about reducing the role of government in approvals, right? A lot of these things are de facto approved. Instead of getting 15 different places for approvals, you just keep one single point of approval, right? A lot of things can be automated, right? Remove arbitrary powers of government and make it a rule based thing, right? When you enforce contracts, this is what happens, right? Rather than having everything in paper, if you put everything within the financial system itself through smart contracts, it reduces the burden on government. You'll still need physical judiciary and all those things to enforce these contracts. When there's a failure of enforcement of contracts, when there is a mismatch or a miscommunication or misunderstanding of these contracts, you will still need judiciary. It is just that it becomes much more easier. Just imagine, right? Land records are being brought into blockchain. What happens with that, right? In digital realm, in bitcoins, at any point of time, one particular bitcoin is owned only by one person, right? And the ancestry is completely traced. Okay, where did this bitcoin came from? Okay, whom did that person get it from? Whom did that person get it from?
This is the biggest problem with land, right? You don't know whom this guy bought it from. At any point of time, there are multiple people claiming ownership for the same part of land. If you digitize land records into blockchain, these kind of problems are being solved, right? The huge amount of cases pending before government is all this kind of land record civil disputes, right? What cryptocurrency is promising it is making government's job easier, much more transparent, right? It is not taking away the role of government. Government should focus on what they are good at, creating welfare schemes, focusing on infrastructure, right? They're still going to collect taxes, but they have to spend it responsibly, right? Because they cannot print money out of thin air, right? Whatever has happened over the years, right? Look at Zimbabwe, Venezuela. What has happened to these countries which printed money out of thin air, right? Nothing good came out of it. You got into periods of hyperinflation where things, the price rose every day by 100%, 100%, 100%. Printing unlimited money is not a solution. The solution is never that easy, right? Government should always be responsible. That is what this kind of responsibility is what cryptocurrencies are bringing into the picture.
Okay, I think it has been a beautiful discussion. Now we would move to other part of our discussion. It's about your journey as an entrepreneur. Now tell us did everything come together initially? How did you find your co-founder and other team members to build this venture?
So looking back, it's kind of like anything you look back, you always think, okay, it's impossible, right? From hindsight, how did it happen? So that's how I see this journey also. Finding the co-founder was the easiest part because we have been batchmates in 2011 to 2013 in IIM Calcutta. We have done a lot of projects together. We ran our own venture within the college. Right? There was a subject where we had to run venture. We sold beanbags in campus. And from then on, the dream was always there to start something together. Right? We were a gang of friends. So I didn't know whom I will start with, but I knew I'll be starting with one of my friends from that point of time. Right? We kept in touch. We had multiple ideas over the years. We were almost this close to starting something in virtual reality, augmented reality setup, right? That didn't come through because we were not totally convinced with those ideas, right? When cryptocurrencies came into picture, right? I could see this is the future. Vikram could see this is the future. See, also I had this own philosophy, right? I should always find a domain to work which is growing in a rapid pace, right? Luckily, I started with telecom. Telecom, if you look at it, 1990s was like an amazing time to work in telecom, right? India was like rapidly, the adoption was like increasing rapidly. From 0% penetration, we went to like 90-95% penetration in a matter of 2 decades, right? So the growth was extreme in telecom, right? Look at the same as IT industry. 1990, if you had joined any IT industry as the lowermost technical guy, right now you will be in the director or senior director level. It is not a reflection of your talent. It is just being at the right place at the right time, right? If you are an extremely good person with what you are doing, you would be in a still more higher position, right? So this is the whole philosophy. So telecom, I saw, okay, I'm already too late. If I had joined in 1995 or 1990, it made sense to be in telecom, right? Then I looked at my next part, renewables, right? Renewables is going rapidly. Even there I saw a little bit of delay, right? Renewables is already into picture, right? We are already into that inflection point. We are growing rapidly. The key is to find something that will grow rapidly 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and develop your expertise in that particular sector so that you become really valuable, right? Just take an example, right? Look at virtual reality and augmented reality. If you find someone with 5 years of experience in virtual reality or augmented reality right now, this guy is going to command a huge premium, right? He can start businesses or even startups which are into this domain. They will want to acquire this person as a resource, right? Because the kind of knowledge he will bring to the table is going to be enormous, right? This was a fundamental philosophy I had all this time, right? So I was hunting for this kind of frontier technologies where we could actually make a difference. And we were going through multiple things, like as I said, big data, virtual reality, augmented reality, cryptocurrencies. But cryptocurrencies really got our attention. We saw there's a huge scope, and it's not just, and virtual reality has always been 20 years in future, right? 1990s people said virtual reality, augmented reality is going to come in next 10 years. Even right now, that promise has not been fulfilled, right? It may take another 10 years is what people are saying. None of the main technologies are commercial yet. You don't see people using a lot of VR, AR in normal things. But cryptocurrencies were right at the point of inflection. The adoption was just starting, that hockey stick curve, we were just at the bottom of this hockey stick graph. So we kind of got convinced that this is going to be the right thing to do something about. And we dabbled on multiple things in cryptocurrencies before thinking, okay, exchange is the best place to start. Exchange is the core of any ecosystem and we should do an exchange. So that is how this idea came into picture. Regarding the team members, see, since cryptocurrencies involves a lot of money, you keep hearing about hacks, and 90% of the hacks generally originate from within the team, right? There's always an insider who is giving you the source code or creating a virus and all those things. So we were very, very careful in recruiting. So only people whom you knew for 5 years, 10 years. What is the first question you ask, right? Who is the best person whom I knew could code, right? The first person who came into my mind was my senior from my college in undergraduate. So I approached him. So initially he was like helping us to recruit, right? Then parallelly he was also building the systems while he was working with another company. He was just on his free time, he was trying to build the system. Actually, I don't know when we recruited him or when he thought of joining us, but it was like over a period of like 3 to 6 months, he was developing the product. We saw a promise. We could see that he could deliver. At some point of time, we said, why don't you join us full time? You are doing this part time. Why don't you join full time? Right? He had a couple of references. He got them. I asked a couple of my school friends. My co-founder, he asked a couple of his acquaintances to join. So this is how we built the company. Right? We have almost 0% attrition. The team that we built, the core team from 2017 to till date, they have remained entirely the same. We have added more people from our references, right? The attrition has only been in the customer support team, right? Whom have been like not the core team. So, so this is how we built our team through references. Because
Oh,
you can find talented people, but the key thing in startup is not just about talent, it's about the self motivation. You cannot micromanage people, you cannot keep following up. Okay, we need to deliver this Friday, can you start doing this? Why don't we do a night out? All those things you cannot talk in a formal environment. You cannot talk to someone whom you don't understand. We need self motivated people who have the drive. So we mostly recruited from our reference through reference. So we could see who were self-motivated people who would do things without much follow-up, whom we didn't have to micromanage, who knew their responsibilities, and that's how we could form this team. Yeah.
what are the challenges you have faced so far while building and growing this venture?
The biggest challenge is the unregulated environment. See, this was the advantage also. I'll be honest here, right? If cryptocurrencies were regulated, we would have all the biggest players like Flipkart, Amazon, PhonePe, all those guys, Paytm, starting businesses here because it's very lucrative, right? In Amazon, in all e-commerce, you have a physical logistics, right? You need to have a warehouse, you need to do delivery. Here, everything is virtual, so it makes much more easier to run things here, right? You are unit economics positive right from the start. Despite that, all the major players, they have not touched this space primarily because it's unregulated. So that is where our advantage lied when we started. But having said that, that is also where our disadvantage is. Right? A lot of time is spent in educating people. Right? That it is still legal to buy bitcoins. It's unregulated. It doesn't mean illegal. Right? We have to convince our team members when they joined us. Right? And to our investors, the same thing we have to talk. Right? Everyone wants to invest in the space because it's a no-brainer. You have Elon Musk, the world's richest guy, putting money in Bitcoin. Right? Everyone wants to have a piece of this, but they don't want to enter into an unregulated space. That's the primary concern for a lot of investors. Right? So this has been our primary struggle. Right? So we cannot do a lot of investments. Right? We cannot expand. We cannot like have a sure future. Right? If there is uncertainty, if government can come up with regulation, they say I'm going to protect this sector. The sector is legal, and I'm going to bring this some kind of confidence if government can give. A lot of people will invest with much more confidence, right? Because everyone has heard about Bitcoin, but no one understands what Bitcoin is. Because of this lack of knowledge, there are a lot of scams that are also there. People launch their own cryptocurrencies, they shill it, right? There are investment schemes which promise 1% per day. All these kinds of scams are running, right? Because it's a lucrative field, people understand, but people don't understand the basics of it, what they should do, what they should not do. Even Geotest, the primary time that's taken by the customer care is in educating people, right? What is a Bitcoin address? How do you transfer from one exchange to another? What are the things you have to keep in mind? You should not share OTP with random people, right? All the basics of digital this thing. So this kind of education, it takes a lot of time. If government can give some kind of a clarity, right? Like mutual fund Sahi Hai campaign, we need to create our own cryptocurrency Sahi Hai. There are risks here. It's a hugely volatile business, right? At the same time, there's also money to be made, but you invest only what you can lose. So these kind of things, like people have this misconception that they have to buy one Bitcoin, right? One Bitcoin is close to 40 lakhs, right? No one wants to put that kind of amount. But the thing is, you can even buy for 100 rupees, but many people don't know that. So this is our biggest challenge, educating the masses about the do's and don'ts and getting them on board in an unregulated space. Yeah.
What is your vision with Geotus? Where you want to take it in next 5 or 10 years time?
In one simple sentence, I'll say we want to be the Google of the space. Why I'm saying, see, Google has kind of become the gateway to internet. Whatever you want to do, okay, you start with the Chrome browser, okay, you start with the search, okay, then through Google, whatever you want to do into internet, you do it, right? And because people enter the internet gateway through a gateway called Google, Google has been able to capture a lot of space. They have their own mail, they have their search, they have their browser, they have the Android Play Store, right? Because they govern the entry and exit of a user. If you look at crypto ecosystem, right, you are a user who has never touched crypto at all. You are getting into the space. There are so many applications, so many opportunities. There is staking, there will be decentralized apps, a lot of things. But for you to get into the space, you need a fiat gateway, right? You have INR, you need to convert into crypto, and then you can do whatever you want to with respect to crypto, right? This is the space we want to be there, right? We are not even focused much on crypto to crypto. We are focusing on building our strengths in the fiat to crypto space, because everything else you can build around this space, right? So we want to become a very strong player in the next 5 to 10 years in India and few other countries. We plan to expand, and based on our strengths here, add more and more areas around keeping this as our core. This is our vision for Geotus.
What are some of the failures you have gone through as an entrepreneur so far?
I wouldn't say failures, right? See, most of the failures or whatever problems we faced as an industry as a whole, right? As I said, in 2017, when we started, we were in the heights of bull run. Bitcoin price was like going crazy from $1,000. It went all the way up to $20,000, right? In 2017 December. After that, it has been a crash. From there, from that heights, it went almost, I think, $3,000 in December 2018, in next 1 year. And in this middle, April 2018 is when we are launching, okay? And 2 weeks before our launch, 1 week before our launch, okay, April 5th, RBI came with the announcement that banks should not serve cryptocurrency entities, right? This was a disaster for everyone operating in this space, right? We are not even launched. We are 1 week away from launch. We have quit our jobs. We have spent 6 months developing a product, and suddenly we find in a space, okay, what are we going to do? But then we realized this is a very good opportunity for us. Something like this had happened already in China, and they went into peer-to-peer. We realized peer-to-peer is going to be the way forward, right? We were the first spot exchange in India to launch a peer-to-peer interface, right? If you launch any startup, the biggest struggle is in getting this first 1,000 customers, right? To getting them to trust. After that, it's kind of easy, right? You see, already 1,000 people are trusting us. Why don't you trust us? For first 1,000 people, you cannot have that kind of this thing, right? No one, and it's also money related. Why will someone give you 10,000 rupees? Why will someone give you 10 lakh rupees without knowing who you are over someone in internet in an unregulated space? These are the questions we are struggling to answer. But if you solve a pain point, right, you find that customers come automatically, right? We use this as our USP, right? We built a product, we discovered the USP 10 days before our launch, and we launched a spot exchange combined with peer-to-peer exchange in April 2014. And as luck would have it, all the major players in the space like Zeppay, Unocoin, right, CoinX, they all went out of business in the next 6 months, right? That created a huge gap which we could fill. So it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Okay, that was the first part. The second part, because it was a bear market and because of this kind of RBI circular, there was a lot of negativity in the market, right? The business volumes dwindled to 1/100th of what it was in 2017, right? So large players, that was also one of the reasons why large players went out of the market, because they had huge teams built, but suddenly you don't have this kind of revenues to support your huge team. So they were running into heavy losses, and they thought, in this kind of uncertain space, I should not continue. And they left the market, again created more space for us. But this also gave us enough time to slowly build our products, right? You are just getting things right. You are trying to achieve product market fit. At that point of time, we are having 10,000, 1 lakh customers, 10 lakh customers in your platform. It is very difficult to meet the needs of all those customers. When we have 5,000 customers, when we have 10,000 customers, it is easy to serve them, right? That 2 years, right, 2018 April to 2020 March, it gave us breathing space to build products at our own pace, to ensure that the security and all those things that are essential for a crypto systems are into place, right? We could build a strong foundation. We could have 50,000 customers who loved our products, right? People keep saying that you don't need 10 lakh customers who like your product. You need 100 people who loves your product, right? You need to have this always, you need to have this core audience who will back you, who will say, I love GeoTest, right? We had those 2 years doing all these kind of things. And when Supreme Court judgment was quashed in March 5th, 2020, and when the bull market was beginning, right, the price crashed to almost 4 lakh rupees in March, right? And from then on, right now it has reached 40 lakhs. This is like a proper hockey stick growth, right? Bull run. So whatever we are doing it in 1 month in February 2020, we are doing it in 1 day now. But it's all because of the foundation that we built over the 2 years, right? We spent 3 years to become an overnight success. That's what Messi used to say. So these are the struggles, but in hindsight, these struggles have helped us really, really, really. All the bad things that we thought at that time, we were like extremely down, like RBI is doing this, bear market, not enough customers, not enough this thing. In hindsight, it has really, really helped us be what we are. Yeah.
This is my final question to you. Tell us what are the learnings you have had throughout the years, which we can take away from this session and our listeners can apply to their own business or venture.
Okay. I think most important takeaway I have is we have been bootstrapped over the last 3 years, right? It's not because of a choice, right? We have always tried to raise investments because it's always good to have more money in your bank account. But because of the uncertainty, because we are not focusing on that, right? We went to a lot of investors. They were like, you have to wait for 6 months, you have to wait for 1 year. That's when we realized it doesn't mean we have to wait for 6 months. We don't have to wait for 1 year. These guys are never going to come into this picture unless it's regulated. But for us, we have to survive till then. We need to break even, right? We have to become unit economics positive as soon as possible. And we have to be really, really frugal when it comes to marketing, right? So if you look at our journey, we have 150,000 customers. We hardly spent any money in acquiring the customers. We focused on our service. We focused on our customer service, and it has been through word of mouth we have acquired customers. Then we have a referral program where we are rewarding the users to bring new users, but we are giving nothing out of the pocket. We are only giving away part of the future revenues, right? When you don't have money, you are pushed into doing right things for your company, right? And actually, the customers that you bring in by spending money, right? Give them 100 rupees for signing up. These customers, we realize they don't stick to your business for a long time. The guys whom you acquire without spending any money, right? They are the real customers because they cannot be swayed away that easily. They see something in your company. That is the reason they're coming into a picture, right? This is the pull and the push difference, right? So money is not always the solution, right? As much as possible, think that you don't have money, even if you have money, and do things in a frugal manner, at least in the first 3 to 4 years while you're finding the product market fit. Because if we had $1 million in our bank account, we would have spent freely. We would not have tried to understand how we get those first 1,000 customers. The hunger, right, to get those first 100, first 1,000 customers, that not having that. We would not have focused on building the product market fit. We would not have built our customers care to that level, right? So that would be my biggest learning. And second thing is chaos is good, right? Whenever there's something that's bad for everyone in the market, you can do something to make a dent and capture market share from others. right? These are the two learnings I will say I would want to share.
Okay, it has been a great pleasure to host you here at TLI. Thanks for your time and our best wishes for GeoTest.
Thanks, Priya. The questions have been really, really beautiful and very thoughtful, right? Thanks for the opportunity to share my thoughts in this platform. Thank you.